Have you ever stopped to think that maybe the story of Adam and Eve that we know is just the beginning, that there is a hidden, almost secret part about Adam's other children that no one talks about? The Bible tells us about Cain and Abel, then about Seth. But so what? Did Adam and Eve have more children than just these three? What if I told you there's an entire genealogy hidden right there in the pages of Genesis, waiting to be discovered? Today, we'll unravel the mysteries of the book of Genesis about these unknown sons of Adam. A story that could completely change the way you view the origins of humanity according to the Bible. Because when we delve into the hidden history of the first humans, we uncover secrets of biblical creation that reveal much more about who we are today. Get ready, because what you're about to discover about Adam's lineage goes beyond what anyone imagines, and I'm certain you'll never read Genesis the same way again. Just imagine, Adam and Eve are expelled from paradise, and suddenly, silence. The Bible skips straight to Cain and Abel, as if nothing else had happened. But wait, does that make sense? Think about it. Two human beings, created to multiply and populate the earth, lived together for hundreds of years. Adam lived 930 years. Eve probably lived a similar amount of time. And during all that time, they only had Cain and Abel? Something doesn't add up, does it? It's as if there's a whole story being told between the lines, a silent narrative about post-Edenic descent that almost no one notices. The truth is that there is a profound mystery hidden just after the expulsion from the garden, a gap in time that holds secrets about the children of Adam and Eve who changed the course of humanity forever. But why this silence? Why did the Bible choose not to detail these years? And more importantly, what happened during this period that was so significant in shaping our history? Here's the verse most people completely ignore. Genesis 5:4 says something extraordinary. And Adam lived after he begot Seth 800 years and begot sons and daughters. Wait, sons and daughters, plural. This means Seth wasn't the only one after Cain and Abel. In fact, this passage reveals that there were other descendants of Adam, a much larger family than we imagined. But here comes the fascinating detail. The text uses the Hebrew terms banim and banot, words that indicate not just 2 or 3 sons, but abundant descendants. We're talking about an entire generation of brothers and sisters who have practically disappeared from the official narrative. Consider the situation. Cain kills Abel, is banished, and then appears married in a city. Who did he marry? Where did this population come from? The answer lies precisely in these children who are not Cain and Abel, a forgotten generation that populated the ancient world. And the most intriguing thing is that these names, these people, these direct descendants of the first human couple, were intentionally left out of the main narrative. Why? What did they represent that made this biblical silence necessary? Some scholars believe this was a divine choice to focus on the lineage that truly mattered to the plan of salvation. But others question, is there something deeper to this mystery of the forgotten children? Seth appears in the story as the replacement. Eve said, "God has granted me another descendant in place of Abel." But here's what few realize. Seth was not just a replacement, he became the link between two humanities. Adam's genealogy in the Bible runs exclusively through Seth. Why? Because his lineage represents something unique, those who began to call on the name of the Lord. While other lineages turned away from God, Adam's bloodline through Seth remained faithful. But this raises a disturbing question. If Seth was the good son, what does that say about the others? Were there sons who followed Cain's path? Descendants who embraced rebellion rather than worship? The book of Genesis gives us a subtle clue. When it mentions that men began to call on the name of the Lord in the time of Enosh, son of Seth, it implies that there were others who did not. A spiritual division was already occurring in early humanity. Seth and his descendants became the recognized biblical patriarchs, but in the shadows existed a parallel humanity, other sons, other families, other paths. And this division would shape all subsequent human history. It's as if God chose to focus on the light, but left clues about the existence of darkness, and these clues reveal much about human nature and free will since the beginning of time. Before we continue unraveling this mystery, let me take a quick break. If this investigation into Adam's unknown sons is captivating you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. This helps me understand that you want more content like this, and it also strengthens our community of people seeking profound biblical truths. Now back to our mystery. Where are the other children? Why were their names omitted? Why weren't their stories preserved? A fascinating theory suggests that these other descendants spread throughout the ancient world, forming the first tribes and civilizations. They carried Adam's DNA, but not necessarily his faith or values. Think about it. If Adam and Eve lived for almost 1,000 years, and if they started having children at a young age, how many direct descendants could they have had? Dozens, hundreds. What if each of those children also lived for centuries and had descendants of their own? The math is impressive. In just a few generations, we could be talking about thousands of people, all direct descendants of Adam and Eve. But the Bible chose to preserve only one specific lineage. This leads us to a profound reflection. Is the history we know merely the official version? Is there a parallel history, a narrative of humanity's roots according to the Bible that has been intentionally left between the lines? What if these other children represent all the choices humanity has made throughout history, some following God, others turning away? Could they be a mirror of our own spiritual journey? Genesis 5:5 tells us that all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and then he died. Almost 1,000 years of life. But what really happened during those 9 centuries? Post-Edenic progeny wasn't just about numbers, it was about multiplying choices, values, and destinies. Each child of Adam and Eve carried within them the potential for good and evil, for faith and rebellion. Imagine Adam's entire family gathered together, generations living together, sharing stories, passing on knowledge. Adam personally recounting the Garden of Eden, what it was like to walk with God, and the fall. But here's the detail many overlook. Not all of these children necessarily accepted their parents' version. Some may have questioned it, others may have chosen different paths. Humanity after Eden was not a uniform block. It was diverse, complex, and full of tensions. And this complexity explains much about the world we encounter soon after in the Bible. Entire cities, different cultures, multiple languages, diverse belief systems, all of this stemmed from this forgotten first generation. The truth is that post-Edenic progeny was the laboratory where humanity tested all the possibilities of free will. And the results, well, they shaped every aspect of civilization that would come after. There is a hidden genealogy scattered throughout ancient texts that mentions names we never hear in churches, forgotten biblical patriarchs who were deliberately omitted from the main narrative. For example, some ancient texts mention Aklima and Lulua, possible daughters of Adam and Eve. Others speak of children like Azura and Awan, names that echo through the millennia but have remained in the shadows of official history. These hidden figures of the Bible were not insignificant. They established lineages, founded cities, and developed technologies. Some texts suggest they invented metallurgy, music, and livestock. But why were these names forgotten? One theory proposes that they represented paths God did not intend for humanity to follow. Technology without wisdom, progress without character, civilization without spirituality. Other scholars suggest something different, that these forgotten patriarchs simply followed paths that deviated from God's central plan. They weren't necessarily evil, just irrelevant to salvation history. It's fascinating to think that there's an ancient history of humanity far richer and more complex than we imagined, and that each of these forgotten names carries a lesson about choices, consequences, and the mystery of human will. What could we learn if we knew their full stories? Here, the story becomes even more intriguing. There are ancient texts, not included in the canonical Bible, that preserved fragments of these lost genealogies. The Book of Jubilees, for example, details names and stories that the Bible only hints at. These writings speak of Awan, who is said to have married Cain, of Azura, Seth's sister, of an entire generation of Adam's sons and daughters who lived, loved, raised families, and shaped the primitive world. But why didn't these texts make it into the Bible? Why were they considered apocryphal? The answer may lie in the fact that they reveal secrets of biblical creation that perhaps weren't necessary for the central message of salvation. Some of these ancient writings suggest that there were conflicts between Adam's different lineages, territorial disputes, ideological differences, even family wars shaped the geography and culture of the ancient world. It is as if these texts preserve the behind the scenes of creation, the stories that happened alongside the main narrative but were considered secondary to the divine purpose. Reading these fragments is like finding missing pieces of a gigantic puzzle. Suddenly, details that never made sense in the Bible begin to fall into place. Ancient mysteries gain context. But can we trust these texts? Or should some mysteries remain mysteries? What if I told you that this forgotten lineage may have influenced all of human history? That entire tribes, ancient peoples, and lost civilizations may trace their roots to these omitted sons of Adam? Think of the earliest civilizations discovered by archaeology. The Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Indus Valley peoples. They all emerged out of nowhere with advanced knowledge, complex systems, and impressive technologies. Where did all this come from? A fascinating theory suggests that they inherited this knowledge directly from Adam's descendants, that the wisdom of the Garden of Eden was passed down through these forgotten lineages, shaping entire civilizations. The origin of humanity in the Bible, seen from this perspective, is not just about individuals, it is about currents of influence that spanned millennia. Each of these hidden lineages carried fragments of the original wisdom, the memory of the lost paradise. But here's the most striking detail. These offshoots were not all the same. Some preserved the worship of the true God. Others lost themselves in idolatry. Some maintained the original ethics. Others embraced corruption. It's as if each branch of this family tree made its own choices about what to preserve of Adam and Eve's heritage. And these choices have echoed throughout human history. When you look at the world today, at the different cultures, religions, value systems, can you still identify the echoes of these primitive lineages? The biblical story, viewed closely, reveals a striking pattern. There is always tension between different lineages. Abel versus Cain, Seth versus the other sons, the line of the faithful versus the line of the rebellious. What if this tension began right there, in the first generation after Adam? What if the struggle between good and evil in humanity is not just philosophical, but literal, expressed through specific lineages that carry different spiritual heritages? The bloodline of Adam through Seth preserved something precious, the memory of God, the practice of worship, the sense of the sacred. But the other lineages, what did they preserve? Did they carry on Cain's rebellion, independence from God? This would explain a lot about later history. Why have some cultures always sought the divine, while others have always rebelled? Why have some peoples preserved concepts of universal morality, while others embraced relativism? The struggle between lineages isn't just genetic, it's spiritual. It's the battle between two worldviews that originated in the first human family and continue to this day. And here's the question that should keep us awake at night. Whose lineage are we choosing to follow? What spiritual heritage are we passing on to the next generation? Because at the end of the day, the hidden history of early humans isn't just about the past. It's about the future we're building now. When we look at the world today, can we still see the echoes of that first division? Could it be that the tensions we experience between faith and skepticism, between traditional and modern values, between different views on the purpose of life, are simply continuations of that first choice? Each of us carries within us the heritage of Adam and Eve. We are descendants of both glory and the fall. We have access to both original wisdom and a tendency toward error. The post-Eden humanity we uncover in this investigation isn't just ancient history, it's our history. Those forgotten children of Adam, with their choices and consequences, live on in every decision we make today. Think about it. When you choose between right and wrong, between following God or going your own way, you are literally reliving the same tension that existed in the first human family. The difference is that now we have something they didn't. The complete revelation of God through Jesus Christ. We have the possibility of not only inheriting the problem, but also inheriting the solution. We are the ones who came after Adam and Eve, and the question is not just what they did, but what we will do with the inheritance we have received. Will we repeat the mistakes of those lineages that turned away from God, or will we choose to follow the path of those who preserved the faith through the generations? And we come to the deepest point of this entire investigation. Perhaps the silence about these other children is not accidental. Perhaps it is intentional. Perhaps God chose not to tell us everything because some truths can only be discovered through seeking. What the Bible doesn't tell us about Adam may be as important as what it does, because in silence we are forced to reflect, question, and seek. In mystery, we find the motivation for a deeper faith. These secrets of biblical creation teach us a fundamental lesson. The spiritual life is not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It's not about knowing every detail, but about trusting the God who knows. When we look at this hidden lineage, these forgotten names, these untold stories, we realize something wonderful. God works through both the revealed and the unrevealed, through both the light and the shadows. And perhaps this is the greatest revelation of all, that our faith doesn't need a complete genealogy to be real, that our hope doesn't depend on knowing all of Adam's children to be valid. In the end, what matters is not how many descendants Adam had, but whose spiritual descendants we are today. And this choice, unlike genetic inheritance, is entirely in our hands. Sometimes God's silence is his most eloquent way of speaking to our hearts. After delving into this investigation of Adam's other unspoken sons, one thing becomes clear. Our history is much richer and more complex than we imagined. These unknown sons of Adam are not just historical curiosities, they are mirrors of our own spiritual journey. Every forgotten lineage, every omitted name, every undocumented choice reminds us that we are part of a much larger narrative, that the origin of humanity in the Bible doesn't end with Adam and Eve, it only begins. The truth about these mysteries of the book of Genesis teaches us something fundamental. God does not reveal everything at once because our faith grows through seeking, our wisdom develops through investigation, and our intimacy with him deepens through sincere questioning. If this dive into Adam's genealogy in the Bible touched your heart, leave a comment. What aspect of this hidden history of the first humans most caught your attention? Subscribe to the channel for more biblical investigations like this, and share this video with someone who also seeks the roots of humanity according to the Bible. But here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Regardless of how many children Adam had, regardless of which lineages we follow, there is a truth that transcends all earthly genealogies. In Jesus Christ, all of us, descendants of Adam, marked by the fall, can become part of a new lineage, the lineage of redemption. As Romans 5:19 says, "For just as through one man's disobedience the many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of one, the many will be made righteous." These, the story of Adam's forgotten sons, reminds us that we all come from the same place, but in Christ, we can all reach the same destination, eternal life. And that's the lineage that truly matters.